Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to you to the June 27th Planning Board meeting. We're happy to have you here, and we appreciate the fact you're participating in your government. So thank you again for being here. Ms. Washington, can we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Mr. Barhu?
Present.
Mr. McLean?
Here.
Mr. Newman?
Here.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Servant?
Present.
Mr. Weatherholtz?
Here.
And Ms. Washington, present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Before we get started, I wanted to compliment our Vice Chairman. He stood in my stead for the last couple meetings, and I've heard from various sources that he did an excellent job. So, sir, thank you. Thank you for your participation and keeping the ship afloat, if you will. So let's move forward to item 3A, which is the minutes of the May 23rd Planning Board meeting, please. Do I hear a motion to accept these minutes?
I'll make a motion that we accept minutes as printed.
Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Moving forward to item number 4A, Ms. Washington.
Item 4A, Second Amendment to Karis Cold Storage PD rezoning, DEV 2023-580, quasi-judicial hearing.
Thank you, ma'am. Hear from staff. Hi.
Hi. Good evening. Dana Lee Pettick, Senior Planner. This item is a request by Jessica Gow with Cobb Cole on behalf of the property owner to amend the Karis Plan Development Agreement to clarify the landscape buffer requirements on the property. The property is located west of South Williamson Boulevard, approximately 1/3 mile south of Bellevue Avenue. The future land use on the property is general industry, and the current zoning is planned development. And this is the aerial of the property, which is out of date. The property is currently under construction with a warehouse distribution development. The property was originally rezoned to planned development in 2022, and a site plan was approved for the warehouse distribution development in that same year. In 2023, the first amendment to the PD was approved to modify parking and signage requirements. Currently, the construction is nearing completion on the property. However, to continue with the design plans as is, a modification to the PD is required to clarify the landscape requirements on the property. So with this second amendment, the applicant is proposing to modify the landscape requirements. First, the applicant is proposing to remove the requirement for landscaping along internal lot lines within the plan development. As the property is currently designed, there is a conflict with the property lines and vehicle use areas. The development was designed with shared parking, which crosses over property lines and would not allow for the required internal perimeter landscape buffers to be planted. By removing this requirement, the shared parking can proceed. For the second revision to the landscape requirements, the applicant has requested a modification and waiver from the Land Development Code. The requested waiver is to modify the requirement for external perimeter landscaping strips, which are typically located along the property line, to allow them to be located on the internal edge of the access road. So this graphic illustrates the request. So the property line is shown in orange, and from the property line moving left, there's the perimeter landscaping strip, the internal access road, and then the interior landscaping area, and then the parking lot, and then the building. So the waiver would allow them to take the perimeter landscape strip from the area next to the property line and move it to where the interior landscaping is, which would give them flexibility in the site design if there's not enough room between the access road and the property line, but still meet the landscape requirements, just in a different location. So with that, staff recommends the Planning Board forward the Second Amendment to the Karis Plan Development Agreement to the City Commission with a recommendation of approval. A majority vote by the Planning Board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission, and this item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by them for first reading on August 7th and second reading on August 21st. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Very well done. Well done. Is it Dana Lee?
Dana Lee.
Dana Lee. Dana Lee, I haven't had a chance to meet you. Welcome.
Thank
you. You did an excellent job. Any questions for staff, please? Mr. Robinson. Start with you, sir.
Would you please speak into the mic?
Oh,
That darn mic.
gotta come on over here. A question for you. On the Karis PD plan, in attachment A, it says that there is a Boris report for additional information. My concern, I didn't see the report in here. I don't know if you left it out or it was.
No, the PD is existing. The arborist report was with the original PD. This is just here for illustrative purposes because the rest of the PD, including that arborist report, the historic trees, the tree preservation, everything else has already been decided with the original Karis PD.
Okay, because I was just wondering why we're taking out all those historic trees.
That was already approved by City Commission.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because we were supposed to be a tree city.
That's right, yeah.
So I was just, okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
My question, good evening. My question is pretty much maybe for clarification. Are they reducing the number of trees that's required, or are they just
No,
moving it?
they're just moving it.
My question is, they'll still have a green area alongside the road?
Yeah, so I don't know exactly where the applicant can confirm where, but they would still have a green area, just be on the other side of the road as opposed to right on the property line. So it'd still achieve the same purpose, which is having a perimeter buffer, but it would just be on the other side of the access road instead of in between the
Because
access
what
road
I
and the
was
property
wondering, I
line.
just didn't believe that they could eliminate that and get closer to the fence. You have to have a certain amount of footage between the fence and the road.
Yeah, that's why they're requesting this waiver. You don't actually have to have a setback from the property line for an access road, correct?
If it's up next to a fence.
Not PD anyway.
Yeah, so this would just be if the perimeter landscaping strip is required, they would be allowed to put it on the other side of the access road, not that it would modify any of the other setbacks.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem. Okay, thank you.
And that total width will be the same. It's just a matter of where it's going to be placed. So the total
Yes.
will be the same.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? from
Yes.
staff? Yes, sir.
I'm not clear on where the access road is on this graph.
On this?
On this, there's
Oh, on the PD.
a piece of it, and I can't tell where that is.
Yeah, I'm not actually 100% sure where it is either, because this was just one snip of the site plan,
Yeah,
so
I can-
Dennis might know. He
I
was.
can help you there.
There, Dennis, please.
Yeah, if you look on page 20 of the staff, of the package that you have, there you go, you got it right over there. So on this plan, right there, you see
Yeah.
the access road is right at the top of the plan.
So that straight line across,
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
Let me see it, Dennis.
and not down this other side as well?
So right over here, the access road is right along the top of the property
Okay.
on that plan.
Thank you, Dennis.
Sure.
Okay. Had it hidden there a little bit, James. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Thank you very much. Good job. Could we hear from the applicant? Hi, Jessica. Long time no see. How you been?
Good, good.
Good, good.
Good evening, Jessica Gow, Cobb Cole Law Firm, 1 Daytona Boulevard, across from the Speedway now. We miss being downtown, but it's nice. Just want to take a minute and add a little bit of color. Danilee does a fantastic job. If you guys recall, when Karis was originally approved, it was one parcel. It had the 3 buildings laid out. That site plan was approved, complied with all land development code requirements. In the financing phase, they realized that some tenants may want to own their footprint. And for financing, it helped to split it out. And so we did a lot split through the city's process to create the 3 lots you see now. But that triggers then internal parcel line landscaping that was never contemplated in the original layout when it was on one parcel. And so we could have technically used some other legal mechanisms to have the building footprints like a commercial condominium where you just had the units instead. But for clarity, we wanted to make sure all the parcels were lined out and everyone knew what was going on. So that's what leads to that first waiver of internal landscaping requirement, is that now we have 3 parcels where the site plan was originally 1. On the border, if you recall when this came through, the access point for this site had to line up with Amazon across the way where that new signal is. And the actual access driveway is partially off of our site. There's an access easement with the adjacent owner that allows for that alignment. And with the trucks coming in, the alignment of that road being straight really helps with maneuvering so they don't make a turn and then have to curve again to not hit the landscape buffer. And so you'll see on the plan detail, like Dennis just pointed out, the modification to bump it internal only applies where that strip runs directly along the property line. Once you get to the back where building C is, it pops back over to the perimeter. So you do have that boundary. And between the roadway, to your question of kind of green space, between the road and the adjacent property, there's an existing drainage swale there that's grassed. It's about 8 feet wide, I think. That exists there, that will remain. And then there'll be a retaining wall by the road. I think that hit them all, and I'm here for questions on this one.
Board, any questions for Jessica? Mr. Robinson, you have that quizzical look. Go right ahead, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. So it is your contention that the one lot will be split up into 3 lots?
It has been split.
It has been? And that was approved?
Yep.
Okay, because I was wondering, are you being proactive in identifying 3 different lots?
Yes.
While you, okay. I'm still concerned about the trees.
So the historic trees that were designated for removal and approved by the board and commission have been removed. We saved half, and half had to be removed. If you remember, it was mostly cattle grazing areas out here, and there were about 16 trees on site total, but they were all very big.
They were gone.
Yeah.
Do you plan on replacing any of them?
We met replacement specifications with the site plan for the replacement trees on site.
So how many trees did you replace?
It's 2 inches for every inch removed, so double the inches of trees, but the number would vary. It's on the site plan.
Anything else, board? With that, Jessica, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you again. We have no other speakers on this item, so I would ask for a motion on agenda item 4A, please.
Yeah, make a motion. We approve Plan Development General PDG DEV 2023-580, second amendment to the Karis PD.
Second.
Very good. And any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously. Moving forward to item 4B, Madam Secretary, please.
Item 4B, First Amendment of Afshari LPGA PD rezoning, DEV 2024-005, quasi judicial hearing.
Very good. Can we hear from staff? And yes, we
Yes.
can. So please.
Good evening, Danielle Pettick again. This item is a request by Jessica Gow, again, with Cobb Cole, on behalf of the property owner to amend the Afshari LPGA Plan Development Agreement to add additional commercial uses and modify other requirements within the PD related to development of the site. The property is located on the northeast corner of Concierge Boulevard and LPGA Boulevard. The future land use on the property is mixed use, and the current zoning is the Afshari LPGA Plan Development. And this is the aerial of the property, which shows the property as partially vacant and partially developed with a Dunkin' Donuts with a drive-through. The property was originally rezoned to plan development in 2017 to allow a restaurant with drive-through lanes and offices as the only permitted uses. In 2019, a site plan for the Dunkin' Donuts with drive-through was approved. The Dunkin' Donuts was completed in 2021, and as a large portion of the PD remains undeveloped and the original PD is limited in what is permitted, the applicant is requesting an amendment to add additional commercial uses and other changes to accommodate potential future development. So with this proposed second amendment, the applicant is proposing several modifications to the PD. First, the applicant is proposing to add additional commercial uses as permitted uses within the PD. These proposed uses include, for example, child care facility, veterinary hospital or clinic, restaurant without drive-through, business offices, retail sales and services, and a hotel or motel. A full list of the uses requested with this amendment is in the staff report. Second, the amendment will allow for flexibility with the site layout. So the applicant has provided 4 alternative conceptual site layouts based on different potential uses. And to accommodate this flexibility, additional language has been added to the PD agreement to allow relocation of buildings and uses as necessary, so long as the site meets the applicable requirements of the Land Development Code and the PD agreement. So these are the 4 site layouts, including one for a restaurant use, a hotel. This is for medical offices, and this one is for retail sales and services. The next modification is to clarify the lot criteria for development and allow for off-site parking still within the PD boundary. These changes include adding a maximum individual building size of 56,000 square feet, add an internal setback of 0 feet, reduce minimum open space from 33% to 30% for the overall property, increase the maximum impervious surface area allowed from 66% to 70% for the overall property, and add language to allow parking on a separate parcel from the intended use it will serve, so long as it is still within the PD boundary and a shared parking agreement or easement is provided. The next modification is to add landscape buffer requirements, internal and external, to the site. The previous existing PD did not have any landscape buffer requirements, so it just defaulted back to the land development code. So with this amendment, they propose to add a 15-foot landscape strip along external property boundaries, a 5-foot landscape strip along internal property boundaries, which is only required on one side of the shared property line, so just be 5 feet total and not 10. And just doubling down on the required 50-foot scenic thoroughfare overlay landscape buffer along LPGA Boulevard. And all of those would be required in this PD with this amendment. And for the modifications to signage proposed with the amendment, the applicant has requested modifications and waivers from the Land Development Code. First, the applicant requests to increase the maximum sign area per ground sign from 120 square feet to 160 square feet. Second, the applicant requests to waive the restriction on off-site signage to allow advertising of uses which are on different lots but still within the PD boundary on the same sign. The applicant also proposes a master sign program with this amendment, which incorporates the requested waivers as shown here. So with that, staff recommends the planning board forward the second amendment to the Afshari LPGA Plan Development Agreement to the City Commission with the recommendation of approval. The item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission for first reading on August 7th and second reading on August 21st. So that concludes staff's presentation.
Great
Thank you.
job. It would appear to me that the modifications and waivers and in general are reasonable, but I do have a question about the uses, that we're going from a couple uses to an expanded amount of uses. Let's say, for the sake of argument, down the line, the applicant wants to build a car wash. They want to build a convenience store. They want to put warehouses in there. If they're going to expand that amount of uses, are they going to have to go back to the beginning? In other words, I want assurances that if they go outside of what they're asking for, they will begin the process at the beginning and move through it again to ask us for that expanded use.
Yeah, that's correct. So the existing PD is limited to just those two uses. The new PD would be limited to these uses that they're requesting. So if they wanted something
Anything
that was
beyond that?
anything beyond that, they'd have to do another amendment, which would go through the public
Come
hearing
back and
process.
talk with us. Perfect.
That's
Thank you.
correct.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you
Mr.
very
Chair,
much. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Robinson.
my
You can turn my head to
concern,
the right.
and maybe I should wait for the applicant, is the signage. I have no problem within the boundaries that, if you have different businesses, you would want signage. However, I don't see why we should have 160 square feet from 120 to 160 square feet. I'm not feeling that. I'm not seeing the need for that, especially, it looks like we have done so many waivers that it is becoming the norm. And, again, I know we're supposed to be site-specific. However, along that corridor that you and I go through every day,
Yes, sir.
it's becoming just a commercialized area and not so much a mixed use or residential. And, given these large signs doesn't contribute to the beauty of that area. It does nothing. It takes away from it. It's just like going into Orlando or Orange, one of those big grand cities, and all you see is commercial signs. I have a problem with that size of signs.
Mr. Robinson, if I might respond to that, and I agree with your basic premise that how big is big, but I think we can, if we have, as a board, have approved many situations in the PD realm that has been, the magnitude has been much, much larger than going from 120 to 160. So understanding what you're saying, but the challenge we get into now, we've approved down the line, where do you draw that line? And is it fair to this particular applicant to not give them at least what I feel is a reasonable change to their square footage. But I understand what you're saying, sir.
Well, the point, Mr. Chair, and I understand what you're saying, is that where do we draw the line? Or do we go back to the drawing board and amend the LDC, right, to reflect the new beginning? If everybody's going to request or wave to a bigger sign, then maybe we ought to sit down and look at do we need to do something with the LDC?
That should be
Yes.
the new standard.
This way we don't have to come
I think that may
in.
be a discussion for another day, but I think it's something we should consider with the marketplace being as it is. Perhaps some of the standards are not keeping up with current development in the city.
Mr. Dennis?
Like to make on that?
Well, we always look at the sign standards and where there's opportunities. If the question is whether or not the 120 versus the 160 is too much, if we change the land development code to open it up to be larger throughout the city, you're going to get that throughout the city. This is very site-specific to allow it just for this property as we take a look at it. And I think that's a good way to do it. That's what the purpose of the planning board is to look at these things and to say, is it appropriate for this location? And so you would investigate it, take a look at it, and LPGA is a very wide right-of-way. It's a very commercial corridor right now, and it was intended to be a commercial corridor, and we're going to see more commercial activity along there. So we look at it, and staff looked at it and says, you know what, this is a sign that's appropriate for the location, and that's why we have the recommendation that we have.
And we're going to look at that, as you just said, Dennis, case by case.
Yeah, case by case.
Site by site,
Correct.
specific
Yeah.
circumstances, specific.
My contention, though, is that with every request that comes in, they're asking for the waiver to the signage.
Sure.
And if it's becoming the norm, let's make it the standard. If you say it's a commercial area or it's a commercial thoroughfare and our 120 sign is insufficient because everybody's asking for a larger sign and you want to maintain that commercial idea along LPGA, then maybe we ought to be saying, okay, let's make this the norm, and maybe you and Mr. Russell can get together to do some, changes.
if we were to
make
say
it the
that,
norm, so
this-
that each
I understand.
each developer that comes in doesn't have to ask for a waiver, and it would be consistent with everybody else. I understand your point that if we go 160, then everybody's going to want to go maybe 200. But where do we draw the line?
Well,
we ought to move the marker so that so we have a level playing field along there, and so that the next time someone comes in to have a waiver, we can say, we have already moved the marker, and this is as far as we need to go, site-specific or not. We're looking for some consistency. If we have small, big, large, and ever, then along that corridor, it becomes unattractive. I live along that corridor. You go by the corridor, you go by the corridor. And we ought to have we need to manage that corridor.
But we also want to be sure that we don't want to get in a scenario where you say, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. And if the change is made, whether it's 120, 160, pick your number, that is now
The
new
norm.
standard. And we, as a board, don't have the opportunity to say, we should hold the line here because of these circumstances at 120.
Yeah.
Because if we did tonight say, okay, the new standard's 160, guess what? Now, that's the new standard. It's now 160 and up. Right now, as we sit here tonight, it's 120 and up. Now, whether we agree to 160 or not, we'll see how it goes in the next 5 minutes.
And
However, our track record has been to grant waivers and just about everyone that comes in here.
Let me also say that in a very close proximity to this is Tomoka Town Center, which is a 30-foot, I think it's a 30-foot sign, which is a very appropriate sign for that location.
yeah.
We wouldn't suggest a 30-foot sign at this location because it's not appropriate. But the 160 square foot and the height is appropriate for the location. So that's what we're looking at. As we go further down LPGA and you get closer to Jimmy Ann, that size sign may not be appropriate, and this gives us the opportunity to look at it now and say, is it or isn't it? And we can look at this site specific and say, yes, it's appropriate for this location.
But Mr. Dennis, every business owner wants to have that edge.
This is the point of the, and we've talked about this before, this is the point of the PD rezoning, is to get very specific on what you
Yeah.
can do for a property with the uses, with the layout, with the signage, with the design. It's all very appropriate for the location, and that's why we do the PD rezoning.
Mr. Robinson, I think your point's been made, and I want to be sure, in the interest of time for everyone who's here
Right.
tonight, that we move forward. Do we
May
have
I
any
ask
I
other
have a
questions for
comment.
staff? Please, Mr.
Comment.
Barker and then Mr. Weatherholt.
Again, I'm also listening, and I'm looking at the amount of waivers. This is like write your own paycheck, with all the different waivers that you're asking for, or this developer is asking for. And you mentioned one is off-site parking. Where would you park off-site?
The off-site parking is not actually a waiver they're requesting. That's just language they would like to include at the PD to allow shared parking within the PD, so they could have more of a master development, and then allow the off-site parking if in the future they wanted to subdivide. So right now, it's one parcel, but this would allow them to have more of a master development with shared parking, and then
So
still
it's
allow
within
them to
their own personal PD, not...
That's correct. Yeah, it's just within the PD boundaries.
Okay, yeah, it's just an awful lot of waivers, and that's something that concerns me too, when you're looking at the amount that they're asking for. And everybody's trying to maximize their land and get as much as they can out of it, and that's where a lot of the waivers are coming in. But I do believe that we have standards. I think we have compromised a lot of the standards that we have, trying to please this developer and that developer in various situations. Whether it fit or doesn't fit doesn't make a difference right now, but that seems to be the trend. So it's either we're going to approve or not going to approve. I do have a problem with all the waivers they're asking for various reasons. Different
Point of
ones.
clarification,
Oh.
they're only asking for 2 waivers, and they're both related to the master sign
And both of them are
program.
listing several different things on those
Yeah,
two
it's just
waivers.
the signage. It's for the 120 to 160 square feet, and then allowing off-site signs for a similar reason as shared parking, because they have one site now, and they would like the flexibility to subdivide in the future, but still limit it to just the 2 master signs.
Understood.
Right.
I have a question about the
What,
signage.
Mr. Weatherholt and Mr. Newman, please.
I have a question about, and I have a thing with parking. You know, of all the waivers, share parking, blah, blah, blah. For all of the different variances of the buildings and everything, do you have adequate parking in this facility to accommodate all 4 of these different variances as far as buildings go? You know, a hotel.
Well,
and
we don't
the
know,
different stores.
yeah, we don't know exactly what the use is going to be, so we don't know what the parking requirement will be. But when it goes through the site plan process, they will be required to meet the parking requirements for those uses. As far as the shared parking, the Land Development Code already allows for shared
Yeah, oh,
parking.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
But I just didn't know, you know, even with shared parking and everything, whether there's still enough parking in this to build a 4-story
whatever,
hotel.
Yep.
yeah, whatever they build, they're going to have to meet the minimum
They're going
parking
to have to
requirements.
justify. If they can't justify, they'll have to move to another use. That's-
Yeah, they're not requesting to reduce any of the parking requirements. It's just to allow them to have the flexibility for subdivision in the future and have the shared parking.
Jamie, do you have a question?
My question was about the increase in signage. Was that so you could have the master signs? Was that to accommodate that master sign with the multiple
yeah, the
signage
picture.
on it?
Yes, yes.
Which is why you needed the more area for
That's
sign-
why the applicant needs it. I don't need it.
Well, you're representing, kind of
Not trying to
represent,
personalize
okay.
Multiple
this.
tenants.
Yeah, it's for the multiple tenants. It's for like having a master development, because they have the Dunkin' Donuts now, and they would like to add other uses, so they could have both of those uses on the same master sign.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for staff? Thank you very much. You did a great job. Jessica, come on up. Tell us all we need to know about this item, please.
Good evening. Again, for the record, Jessica Gow, Cobb Cole Law Firm, 1 Daytona Boulevard. This site is an interesting one, and you guys know I like to pick on PDs that happened before my time. So it was 2016, 2 years before I got here, and it was very specifically drafted for one development plan that was a Dunkin' Donuts and medical in the rear, and some office space by the Dunkin'. The Dunkin' Donuts was built, open, it's a great site. The office component wasn't needed really on the Dunkin' corporate side anymore, so you'll see on all of the variations of the PD plan They're currently talking to, and it's, contemplated under this amendment, a takeout-only pizza place to utilize that small office footprint of the existing construction that's already there. So kind of an adaptive reuse that we really like. And then the 4 variations of development, one is still medical, but I think we've seen medical kind of transition to farther down Williamson with all of the developments out there. So still hopeful it could come, directly adjacent to this site by the Blake Assisted Living Facility. There is an existing doctor's office right there, so there could be some consistency there. The other concepts are hotel, some restaurant, and then more of a mixed use that has some retail and restaurant component all laid out there. All of those layouts have been tested by Rick Dixon, our civil engineer, to comply with parking per code with the initial layout. Of course, we get into engineering and have to prove that up. I do want to clarify that most of the language that we've added here is to clarify items that no longer fit if it is not that very specific layout that was in the previous one. And so when you look at the kind of the lot coverage and open space, still above code requirements, right? Normally it's that 80-20, 20% open space, 80% impervious. We're still at 70-30. It's just that shift, that 66 was the very specific medical footprint that they had on that old plan, I think. And then on signage, this is very similar to Karis, which is it's currently one parcel. We're hoping that a developer comes in, wants to partner for something in the rear, and they may want their own parcel. Under the city's code, if we split those parcels, one, we'd have to have a shared parking agreement, so we're contemplating that because it's designed right now as kind of a mixed-use free flow. But 2, each parcel then could have 2 signs at 120 square feet each. So 240 square feet per parcel, 480 total. We are restricting the site for 2 signs at 160 square feet or 360. So we're reducing the potential overall master signage on the site to include an integrated sign plan where you don't have 4 signs that might not match, that might not be a consistent look for the area. They're a little bigger, but so that you have those tenant signs and panels on the sign itself. So those are the 2 waivers as signage specifically. Everything else is just kind of clarifying language for the development programs. And with that, I am here for any questions.
And Jessica, if we come back and expand this usage list, you're coming back to see us, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any speakers for this item, so I'm looking for a motion for item 4B, please.
I make a
Motion to-
motion, we approve item 4B, First Amendment of Afshari LPGA PD rezoning, DEV 2024-005.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. That ended up 6-1.
I
Okay.
opposed it, Mr.
Oh, did you as well? So 5-2, my
I
apologies.
didn't get a chance. No,
Who opposed it?
I also opposed it.
I did.
Oh, I didn't.
Mr.
we got
Robinson and Mr.
three?
Barber, I believe.
I
You,
oppose.
you opposed it, and you?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I tried to go 6-1, and Mr. Robinson kindly corrected me, and I appreciate that. Okay, moving forward to item 4C, Madam Secretary, please.
Item number 4, excuse me, item number 4C, Sunglow Mini Storage Site Plan, DEV 2023-455, quasi judicial hearing.
Thank you very much. I hear from staff. Hey.
Good evening, Doug Gutierrez, planner with the city. This is a request by Kim Buck, Allen Engineering, on behalf of Flagship Companies Group LLC for a site plan to allow for a self-storage facility, offices, and flex space. The location is on the west side of Wesley Street, approximately 500 feet north of LPGA. This is the aerial view. There are 2 lots, lot 1 and 2, that's shown on here, and just ignore the Advent Hospital thing. This is a future land use, which is mixed use, and the PD for Sunglow that was approved. In 2020, the large-scale comp plan amendment and text amendment were approved. 2020, the PD zoning was approved. And 2022, the PD was amended to modify uses. Site plan approval is to allow, and I'm correcting a couple of numbers here. It's not 19,000, it's 20,000 for the 2 office buildings. And it's not 107,907, it's 106,886 for
Well
the
done, sir.
3-story. Pardon?
Done?
And then you'll have a dry pond located in the northwest corner of the site. And the parking infrastructure will be on both lot 1 and 2, and I'd also adjust the numbers. They still add up to the same, it's just 78 rather than 73 and 48 rather than 53. The building elevations comply with the PD agreement and the existing building. Sorry. Parking will exceed LDC standards. Traffic review, I believe, was completed already, and utility department comments need to be resolved. This is the site plan showing the 2 buildings, parking area. This the whole parcel, which includes that piece to the north, which I believe is going to be used for retention. The landscape plan. And this is a proposed architectural elevation. I believe it's the same throughout the, they had 30-odd other facilities that look like this. Staff recommends approval of the major site plan for Sunglow Mini Storage to allow for a self-storage facility, offices, and flex space on 13.2 acres. Majority vote of the planning board members present voting is required to approve the application, and I believe the applicant is here, and that concludes staff's presentation.
Very good. Any further questions for Doug? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Have they hear from the applicant, please? Good evening.
Good evening.
Please give us your name and address for the record, if you don't mind.
Mr. Chairman, Philip Hollis for the Flagship Companies Group, 1190 Business Center Drive in Lake Mary, Florida. But we're also all Volusia County residents. Staff did such a thorough review and such a good job on this project, working with us, and good job on the presentation as well. So really, I would just concur with staff comments and recommendations, and we'll be happy to answer any questions or provide rebuttal if needed.
Very good, sir. Any questions? Mr. Robinson, start with you.
Hey, welcome. How you doing?
Good, good.
I'm trying to recall my memory. The last time we were here, I believe the neighbors had some issues, and you were going to meet with them to resolve some of those issues.
And we did.
And what was the outcome?
Yeah. The outcome was that we reviewed the ecological study, and actually some of the birds and things they were concerned about were actually located in the 60-foot buffer that's between our property and their lots. That's not even a part of our site plan. There's a strip that runs along behind the residential lots that is not a part of our actual property and site plan.
And their privacy concerns?
Well, the entire site plan, all of our projects, we use the single-story buildings to actually like screen walls from the neighborhoods. And we position, if you put the site plan up there, we position the stormwater retention pond up in an area where it doesn't impact, the residential at all. If you can get it over, there you go. So all that area up there where the residential is a right of way and so forth. The tower site is on the left-hand side of the drawing, and there is no impact there. And then you can see that strip I'm talking about that is to the east of our property that's next to those neighbors. But yeah, we met outside, talked with them, and they understand that, our one-story buildings are really acting as screen walls on the rear of those to screen out.
And your retention pond, which is near the neighbors, the issue of flooding.
No, it's a dry retention pond.
It's a dry retention pond.
Yeah.
So the flooding issue won't affect the neighbors.
No, the water gets perked
Okay.
into the ground. And that area there, though, the flooding question was that, yes, the area where our retention pond is, proposed was a little lower lying area before. And that flooding problem has gone away because it's no longer a low lying area, that it's now a retention pond that percolates the water, so.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, welcome.
Very good. Any other questions for the applicant? None at all? Just a quick comment.
Yes, sir.
Notice that you mentioned about that your offices being in Lake Mary, and I did get a kick out of one of the attachments that you showed your perspective view of the office with CPH engineers out of Sanford. I've spent a little time in Seminole County myself, so I know those folks really, really well, and certainly understand it's very consistent about what your footprint is, so.
Yeah, we previously developed another very attractive state-of-the-art self-storage facility in the city of Daytona Beach on LPGA Boulevard. This is our second one, actually, on the LPGA, or off. This one is off of LPGA Boulevard, meets the 500-foot rule, of course. Yeah.
Fantastic. Good, good to hear. Anything else? Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here tonight. No speakers on this item, board. I'd ask for a motion for item 4C.
Motion to approve item 4C.
Thank you.
Sunglow Mini Storage Complex, major site plan approval, DEV 2023-455.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Moving forward to item 4D, Madam Secretary.
Item 4D, proportionate fair share process, LDC, text amendment, DEV 2024-006, legislative hearing.
Excellent, thank you. Maybe, could I hear from staff on this one, please?
Sure, thank you. I'll take this one.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis Mrozek, Planning Director with the city. This next item is a request by Growth Management and Planning Department to amend Article 2, Administrative Authorities, and Article 3, Review Standards of the Land Development Code to modify the approval process for transportation proportionate share agreements and include additional staff responsibilities for review and approval of certain contracts and instruments. The couple details about the proportionate share agreements. These are all approved at the staff, or excuse me, they're approved at the city commission level. The request is to have these approved at a staff level. Proportionate share agreements, or excuse me, payments, they satisfy the requirements for traffic concurrency for site plans and plats. Payment is based on an established formula considering the proposed use, traffic demand, existing roadway conditions, and capacity. Payment is required prior to a site plan approval. Proportionate share agreements currently approved by the City Commission at a quasi-judicial hearing. Proportionate share agreements are based on clear, objective criteria, which is really an administrative decision. And the proposed text change would allow staff, allow approval by staff after review by the city and county traffic professionals, which would help to streamline the process for approval. We have three different areas that we're changing here. The first one is going to be the one that I was just mentioning is an approval by staff for the proportionate fair share. The second one is a proposed text change that allows for a deferment agreement after payment of transportation impact fees. This is if we have an application going through the process of the prop share and it's getting bogged down, and this happens sometimes. It's actually probably the longest process we have is to go through a transportation concurrency review. And sometimes it gets bogged down. So this would be the opportunity for them to pay their full impact fees associated with traffic in advance, which is almost always greater than the proportionate share agreement. So they would front the cost of the impact fees, and then we'd be able to do a deferment agreement as they're still going through that prop share process.
So we're not doing that deferment agreement until we have the money in our hand.
Until we have the money in our hand, and then that's a non-refundable payment that they make. The third change that's associated with this text amendment is to add these responsibilities, add the responsibility of the proportionate share agreement for city staff and the deferment agreement at the city staff level. But it's also to add things that staff is already doing administratively and to put that in the land development code as well. This includes the sidewalk cafe agreements. This was recently approved at the last city commission meeting, so staff does the approval for that, so we're going to put that into the land development code to recognize that. Staff also currently approves contracts for plat recording and affordable housing deed restrictions. That's already currently a staff responsibility. We're putting that in the code just to recognize that as a staff responsibility. So staff does recommend approval of this request to modify the approval process for the transportation. Hang on a second. Did you want anything? Okay. To modify the approval process for the transportation proportionate share agreements and include additional staff responsibilities for review and approval of certain contracts and instruments. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission, and the item is anticipated to be heard by the city commission for first reading on August 7th and for second reading on August 21st, 2024. And that does conclude staff's presentation.
Very good, thank you, Dennis. Now, you mentioned about the proportionate share approval process, and you mentioned there's really no deviation. So what we're talking about here, either we accept the number that the formula spits out or we don't.
Yeah, it's a very specific criteria and formula that's used. We actually employ an outside traffic consultant that represents the city. We've got 3 of them, and we rotate the reviews, but they're required to meet all land development code requirements and all state statutes as far as the formulas for the proportionate fair share. And it's also reviewed by the county, and the county engineers will review it also. And they have to have a consensus on that number, and everybody has to be on the same page and agree that that's the number that the prop share is. And once that occurs, then we're locked in that they've met all of the requirements.
Mr. Dennis, can they, what if they disagree with the outcome of your numbers?
They don't go anywhere then.
There has to be an agreement among all the relevant traffic professionals that have input into the amount. And since the amount is reached as a consensus before it actually becomes before the commission, it's a process that really doesn't make sense for a quasi-judicial proceeding. It's a formulaic determination that's already made by the time the commission hears it. And so it makes more sense that this would be approved on a staff level for that reason.
What if the business or the developer disagrees during the negotiation among yourselves?
Then it doesn't go forward.
Is there a way that the developer can appeal it, or says, you know, I don't agree, who can I see to override the staff?
The formula, there's no approval process.
It's just the formula, yeah. It's if they don't agree with what we interpret as to be the amount, then staff isn't bringing the item forward.
Well, and the reason I'm bringing that up, it occurs to me that the Supreme Court just made a ruling about the administrative state, and they took away the powers of the SEC to have administrative law judges have the trial if somebody broke the law. So what I'm saying is, if I am a developer and I came in, right, and you gave me this formula with like $10 million for my share, and if I disagree, who do I go to?
Nobody.
They would initiate litigation
Right.
as a response to that.
Okay.
That's the same process. That we're not changing that process.
Okay.
It wouldn't be any different. The only process we're changing is how the city approves the agreement once one is made. And in the way it stands now, that agreement goes before the commission. But because it's such a formulaic process where all the parties typically agree on the ultimate number that's determined, it doesn't make sense to go through a quasi-judicial proceeding. And it makes more sense for it to be approved
Okay.
at the staff.
So if I, as a developer, disagrees with your numbers, I can sue you in court.
Sure, they could. And importantly, this would also allow for the agreement to be approved on a quicker scale, because if you have to go through, a commission meeting and you have to get on an agenda, it causes delays, which is part of the reason that we're having these situations where we're coming with these deferment agreements that allows them to begin construction, because it takes so long for the project to get approved.
I was just making sure that there is a way for the developer or the landowner to say, look, I disagree, and how can I address that disagreement.
And I would think, Mr. Robinson, the challenge would be for the applicant to say, is the formula being used inconsistently? In other words, under similar circumstances, this person had X, I have Y, what's the difference? If they, I would think, if they can't show that the formula was applied inappropriately, it's going to be a tough road for them, I would suspect.
Yeah, but they could find.
Not that I'm a judge. Let someone else figure that out. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just had a question for Dennis. I
Please.
believe the first one that you were talking about, says staff will be responsible for payment. Is that just to receive and document payment, or is that to set payments? I'm just trying to get.
Well, the prop share determines.
one, yeah.
Yeah, the prop share determines what the dollar amount is.
Okay, so
In,
that's all
in
agreed.
almost 99% of the cases, all of that payment of the prop share goes to the county. So when we get a site plan ready to be approved,
But
what,
staff will be able, I'm just trying to get clarity, staff will be able just to receive the payment, not determine how much the payment is.
staff is, and our consultant is part of determining what that dollar amount is. The city doesn't, and as I was saying, in almost all of the cases, that prop share total that comes in is going to the county, because most of these are the county facilities. So what we're getting at our staff level is a receipt that the payment was made with the county. And we won't release the site plan or the prop shares until we get the receipt of that payment being
Okay,
made.
that's what I
It's the
need to
result from for the formula that
Right,
should not be.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, and anything else for Dennis? I do have a speaker form here for, just want to be sure it's the right item. Kim?
Nope,
Kim
that was the
Bond?
last one. Kim.
Okay, Kim's moving on. Okay, very good. Okay, with that, I'll ask for a motion on item 4D, please.
I make a motion that we accept Land Development Code Tax Amendment DB 2024-006, change to proportional share.
Second, I heard a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Moving forward to item 4E. Madam Secretary, please.
Item 4E, excuse me, signage in public parks, LDC text amendment, DEV 2024-382, legislative hearing.
Very good. Thank you, Dennis. I think you're rolling. We'll
Yeah.
do one more shot.
Might as well do one more.
Yes, sir.
So this item is a request by Growth Management and Planning Department on behalf of the Public Works Department to amend Article 6 Development Standards, Section 6.10 signage of the Land Development Code to exempt non-commercial informational signage installed by the city in city parks or on city properties or on city buildings from the LDC signage standards. So this was actually, I had a great conversation with some of the folks over in Public Works and some of the delays that they're experiencing with some of the signage that they're trying to install for the city. Signage in the city is allowed based on the zoning districts. A lot of our facilities are located in residential zoning districts, especially the parks, and residential districts offer very little to no signage. So every time a signage plan would come forward, they would be required to go through the public use permit process to be able to install a sign into a public park. It really slows the process down. I've talked to Public Works; they've got signs they're ready to install, and they can't do it because it's just not meeting code requirement. So the public facilities, they're located in many different zoning districts throughout the city. The proposed text would exempt city parks, city properties, and city buildings from meeting those LDC standards. This is applicable only to non-commercial and informational signs that are installed in the city by the city or by representatives of the city. It wouldn't include any commercial signs. If we had a park that had a commercial entity in it, they would still have to, they would probably have to go through the public use permit process to be able to have any type of signage. This would just be for informational signage. I provided a slide over here that shows some of the signage that we're talking about. You see the City Hall sign that I was talking to Public Works. He said, yeah, they probably couldn't replace that sign because it wouldn't meet code requirements for putting a sign in there. So if they wanted to upgrade that sign, they'd have to go through a full process. That would be quite a delay. You see the signs on the bottom for Sunnyland Park. Those are the ones that they want to install. They want to replace the Sunnyland Park sign that's over there. They want to put in consistent signs. throughout the city, and this is the sign type that they've been using, and they can't install these because the sign code does not permit them to. So it's a very simple text amendment that we're proposing. It's just to add a section here that talks about non-commercial and informational signs for city buildings, city parks, and city facilities being exempt from the sign section. So staff does recommend approval of the request to amend the Land Development Code to exempt non-commercial and informational signage installed by the city in city parks or on city properties or on city buildings from LDC signage standards. Majority vote of the planning board members voting, president voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission. And we expect the item to be on the August 7th commission for first reading and the August 21st city commission meeting for second reading. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Dennis. I'll say this, I'm in favor of this for no other reason, but if we can shorten the process to have that city hall sign, which has to be the most boring sign I've ever seen in my life, upgraded in some way, I'm all for that. I'm all for that personally. So any other questions for Dennis, please? All right, seeing none. Ask for a motion for item 4E, please.
Didn't you have a speaker? Didn't you?
I don't believe we do.
Oh, no, okay.
No, I don't believe we do. But
Okay.
thank you for mentioning it.
All right, make a motion that we
straight, Tom.
approve Land Development Code Text DV 2024-382.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, moving on to other business. Some of our committees have hear from representative of the Downtown Redevelopment Area Board, please.
Okay, we discussed the extension of the security downtown. Everyone seemed to feel that that has been a successful program.
That's great.
So they're actually extending the test period. I don't remember for how long, unfortunately. We discussed and approved a mural along Myrtle Lane on the side of the Daytona Magic building, which depicts different historical figures in magic and card tricks, and it's a very interesting mural. We also discussed extension of some of the grants being offered in the redevelopment zone, commercial property improvement grants, lease subsidy grants, and some others.
Okay, well, it sounds like you had a lot going on in that meeting. That's great. Thank you. Midtown, please.
Midtown did not meet. City had a meeting scheduled that evening, and a large number of the members of that board attended the meeting that city had.
Let's see, didn't leave enough for said meeting, huh? And wasn't enough left. Okay, thank you. Beachside? Anyone for
Beachside Redevelopment Board, they had a meeting, they had a very lively meeting.
Ah,
A lot of discussion, a lot of comments from the public. Some of the things I think they're going to get resolved. Some of the issues that they had a problem with, but other than that, it's business as usual.
okay. All right, very good. So was business related or procedural related issues?
It was kind of a combination of procedural and business.
Okay, just curious. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Appreciate it. Affordable housing, ended up being, Dennis, a last minute cancellation. Yes. That didn't have a quorum, rumor had it. And our next meeting will be on Wednesday, the 21st of August, so we'll look forward to hearing what's going on at that point. Any other public comments? Okay, very good. Any staff comments?
Yeah, I do have one comment. We were trying to get an agenda item on for this meeting. We just weren't able to do it. If you recall, a couple of meetings ago, we talked about affordable housing and waiving fees, impact fees and application fees for certain affordable housing projects. It came here to the planning board. Planning board recommended approval to the city commission. We haven't taken it to the city commission yet because upon further review, we want to make some more changes to that. So the changes are substantial enough to bring back to the planning board so we can take a look at them before we bring them back to the city commission. So you can expect that at the next meeting. What I didn't want to do was just put it onto an agenda without giving you an opportunity to look at this before you were to act on it. So we'll give you a little bit more time to look at it, and it'll be in the package when it comes out next meeting.
Mr. Dennis, was that the one that the neighbors were opposed to?
No, I think that was the Lakewood Senior Living is what you were talking about, the affordable housing project?
Yes.
That's still scheduled to go to City Commission for first reading in July 3rd, and then July 17th for the second reading, so.
The one that we disapproved.
Yeah, you did not have a recommendation for approval, and the report reflects that to the City Commission.
Okay. So the one that you're going to bring back to the,
That's the LDC text amendment. That's dealing with how we're doing the affordable housing and the reimbursement of the fees.
Yeah, approve or disapprove, that recommendation moves forward.
It
So-
does, yes.
Okay, with that, any board comments?
I will not be at the next meeting. I have another engagement already scheduled.
What?
I'm
Well,
gonna
it's
miss one.
pretty easy for me to say that, right? But we will miss you, Pastor Brown.
Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Yes, please.
I just wanted to emphasize that I'm not anti-business. I'm very pro-business. What I am is pro-rules. And if we have established rules to go by, to play fairly for everyone else, we want all the business to realize that when they come to Daytona and to do business, that they should all level the playing field and go by the rules. If the rules are not as such that are pro-friendly to the business entity, then we all need to get together, because we've been saying this for a couple of years. Oh yes, we need to look at the LDC and make changes. We've talked about it, but we have not done the job to go back and re-examine it. And maybe we need to look at the process and to see, how many waivers that we're given and whether or not the rules are being allowed.
And your point's well taken.
Thank you.
And there are times, and I think we've all been through this, where unique circumstances require unique solutions. And we want to be sure, hopefully, that this board has the flexibility to look at those, as we talked earlier, on a case-by-case basis, to be able to do that. But your point's well taken, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, seeing there's no more questions or comments for the good of the community, this meeting is adjourned.
Right.